Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Leppy Duels presented by Jarvie Media, week number 12. I'm your host, Jacob Arvidsson. I'm excited to have all of you back with us this week. If it's your first time, here's how the show works. In a moment, you'll meet our 4 distinguished guests. Each of those guests will go 1v1 versus the other 3 contestants. Within each duel, each contestant will have 1 minute to deliver their points on the assigned debate topic, along with an additional 20 seconds to respond to their opponent's comments. After that, I, as the host, will determine a winner of each duel, and the first one to fill their scoring bar wins the episode. Simple enough. Let's meet this week's panel. First up, returning to defend his title from Week 11, the Team Discraft Underground Captain Wes Shinovar. Our second guest this week is the Assistant Tournament Director from the Jonesboro Open this weekend. Give it up for Seth Fenley. Third, joining Seth in Jonesboro for the DGBT event this weekend, DGA-sponsored Trevor Harbold. And finally, rounding out the cast after his first appearance last week, the owner of Crew 42, Zach O'Haron. Thanks for joining us this week, guys. Pleasure to have all 4 of you returning to the show. Let's get into it. Wes and Seth, you'll be up first. You'll be debating the impact of Kristen Tatar and Isaac Robinson's pure dominance over their respective fields this past weekend at the first major of the year. What impact, in your guys' minds, did that dominance have on the overall perception of the Champions Cup? Wes?
Yeah, Tatar and Robinson, first off, we kind of expected Kristen. At least we knew that this was a possibility. She's been playing absolutely phenomenal this season, the last several tournaments especially. I mean, she just is dominating backhand, forehand, and especially on the putting green right now. So how did that impact the first major? It kind of played out the way we thought that it might. Maybe a little bit of a surprise that she kind of ran away with it by so much. I think that last day, it wasn't super exciting on who was going to win because it was clearly going to be her. But the jostle for some of those later positions, second, third, fourth, etc., was interesting coming down the stretch. I think Robinson was a surprise. We saw some press out there that a lot of people projected that he would win a major this year. You certainly saw some flashes of talent that he had last year. Clearly a tremendously talented kid. It was just a question of could he put it together over the course of 3 rounds or 4 rounds like this for a major, and we saw that. I was really surprised by Robinson by how much he won by. I'm not surprised that he won, but I think the margin of victory that he had was actually pretty surprising, and I think bodes well for him for the rest of the season here.
All right, Seth, so what's the impact of the dominance by those 2?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have a different take on Isaac. I think that if we looked at how he performed at Idlewild last year, we knew that this was in him, right? Like, he came out and dominated Idlewild. You had Paul Macbeth famously saying, you know what, even I couldn't beat him, with the way he was playing. And we saw that happen again. I think that these are the courses that suit Isaac very well. I think the most surprising part of it was how poorly Isaac's done previously this season. And so I think what it tells us then is that we're looking at someone who plays very well in the woods and someone who has a specific course type that they're going to dominate at, and that they have some areas of their game that they probably need to work on to be able to be a dominant force across the tour. I think Kristen did what we expected her to do, and the rest of the field didn't show up. And that's the part that really made it so staggering.
All right. Good takes from both of you guys there. I want you to take it a little bit further. How did their just running away, obviously, like you said, both of them ran away with from their respective fields, but how did that change the way maybe the fans at home or the other players viewed this major in particular, Wes?
Yeah, I think for me this is tough because we're calling this one a major, right? An early season major, but it doesn't, like, I feel like I look at the other majors and they have so much history, there's so much story behind them. They have this precedent, and it doesn't. This one kind of feels like a new major, a light major. I definitely don't put as much weight on this one as I do on any of the other ones at this point. But, I think the impact for Isaac is that this is a tremendous boost for his career to get a major title under his belt. Another one for Kristen, kind of a notch in her belt at this point as she starts to rack them up. But in terms of what this did for the viewers, I think people like to watch a close battle. You like to see something happen coming down the stretch, the possibility for some back and forth, and both of them running away with it made it a little bit less exciting. But you kind of find some excitement in maybe those second, third, fourth place positions and how people are going to jockey for those finishes instead of who's going to come in with a victory.
All right, Seth, your take?
Yeah, I think that on the MPO side, the thing that we should look at is the different names that were at the top. I think that it tells us that there's possibly a changing of the guard as to who we can expect to be at the top. With you, when you have Isaac Robinson winning and Nicholas Antila and Silas Schultz tying for second, like that's or coming out there, like that's a big thing. Or Eagle tied for second. I'm sorry, like those names are not ones that we're super used to seeing at the top, and something to look for. I think, like I said earlier, on the FPO side, we're just seeing the rest of the field not really rising to the occasion, but it is something that the rest of the field has done before. So I think that it's not, it wouldn't be surprising for us to see a close battle on the FPO side this weekend. But it also wouldn't be surprising if Kristen, just comes out and wins it by 20 or something. So we'll have to tune in and see.
All right, so both of you guys had different takes on Isaac Robinson, but definitely similar takes on Kristen. You weren't, either one of you was not real surprised that she won, and not really super surprised either that she was able to pull away the way that she did. It sounds like you guys were, Seth in particular, maybe a little bit disappointed that the rest of the FBO field didn't show up like you said, but it is what it is. So going back to the question, what's the impact of their dominance? This one's kind of a toss-up between you two, but I think, you balance yourself out with your points. I'm going to lean toward Wes on this one, though, because you kind of brought in the fans saying, hey, we may, at least giving it some acknowledgement, we may have lost a couple people in there just based on there not being a whole lot of competition that final day. Might have turned some people off a little bit. So, Wes, I'm going to give you the edge here in this duel. Sends us to duel number 2. Number 2, Trevor and Zach. Drew Gibson had a recent tweet that's been blowing up on social media. First thing he addressed in the tweet was related to elevated baskets. So what's your guys' take on that tweet and those comments on elevated baskets? And then what's your take on elevated baskets yourself? Go for it.
So as far as the tweet, it's Drew Gibson. He's going to tweet whatever he wants. That's what Twitter's for. So the tweet doesn't matter to me. On the elevated basket side of what he's talking about, I agree with him on pretty much everything he says. We shouldn't have this like 7 elevated baskets at a course that make it a little bit harder. I think that 1 or 2 is tasteful. I do like it that the sponsorships are on it and there's money to be gained, and maybe that's why they have a lot more, but there's other ways to do that for sponsorships. So while I think it's cool looking in the way the Pro Tour does it, I think that elevated baskets are a little random and a little unlucky, and it causes the disc to do weird things when it hits the ground from that high of a level. Also, the wind being up there, it brings it into play. I don't think that's too much of my issue. I just think that too many is gimmicky and it's kind of tacky. So if you do it tastefully on a couple of holes, then I think it's good. But wax it when there's more than 2 or 3.
All right, well said, Trevor. Zach, what's your take on the baskets?
Yeah, I think one of the things Drew kind of approached with was talking about like the manufacturing side and that there's 82 centimeters between the rim basket to the grade of the ground. And if that's true in installation, then we have a huge problem with the PDGA because probably 90% of the baskets that are installed in this country might be illegal under that grade. So I don't think that the argument necessarily should be that there shouldn't be elevated baskets, although Trevor makes some points there. I think the argument should be what is considered an elevated basket. I spent quite a bit of time over the last couple of days, like kind of lifting a basket at different heights and seeing, like looking at it and just eye testing is like, do I consider this to be elevated or not? And I kind of came to this conclusion that if the basket rim to the grade or to the ground is sitting around 5 feet or so, I don't even think of it as being elevated. I'm around 6 foot tall, so that's going to change for people that are a lot shorter than me. But just like, I think it'd be a better idea to identify first what is considered to be elevated, and then anything that goes beyond that measurement, whether 5 or 6 feet or whatever the case may be, then we can start talking about getting exceptions or start looking at the other things Drew said, which is having a layup zone potentially to kind of mitigate that height difference so that you can approach the basket more appropriately.
All right, interesting take there. I love the background research, Zach. Trevor, what's your response?
All right, man. First of all, I'm from Kentucky. You went all scientific and stuff, man. Elevated means it's just high, right? It's just high up in the air. So all of those that are real high up in the air, man, we only need one or two of those. I've played on baskets before that were in the ground, man. So like some of these holes are just gimmicky and dumb. Like let's just get a right angle, or get the right height that we need, and let's just put on baskets, dude.
Zach?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna hit hard on my point here. So, like, you're right. Gimmicky's a problem. Drew says it in his video. Putting at 14 feet up in the air is not the intention here. If we look at some elevated baskets here in Michigan, for example, hole 9 at Leprechaun Hollows, hole 12 at Flip City, hole 7 at Bluegill, some of these elevated baskets are around flat ground and they're over that 6 foot mark, whatever we want to determine that to be. I think 5.5 feet, 5 feet is a fair measurement. Anything above that would be elevated. But like looking at the Leprechaun Hollow ones, there's a plateau to the right of it that if you lay up to that zone, it's really you're back down to a shorter basket. It's not as elevated, you can approach it. I think there are ways for you to handle some of those more elevated baskets, whether they be on the grade of a hill or you have a playable surface you can lay up to. But I think we really do need to define in the PGA first what we consider to be elevated. If we have that measurement, then we can sit there and build pyramids and have the advertising fit in a really good space and still keep players happy.
All right, well said, both of you. Trevor, I love that you said elevated baskets are okay. It's just the excessive use of them that becomes gimmicky. So I'm glad you made that point. But I'm going to give Zach the edge here. He went all research background on you. He came prepared, ready to go, lots of firepower. And he even name dropped the best course in the world, Leprechaun Hollows. So I can't say no to that. But yeah, Zach takes the win here. Great points from both of you. Sends us to duel number 3. Trevor, you are back up. You're taking on Seth. Seth is going to be leading the charge here. If we take another look at Drew Gibson's tweet with the elevated baskets, the next part of that tweet was referring to, quote, other rules that aren't being followed. So what rules is he referring to? Are those actually not being followed? And does it really actually matter? Seth?
Yeah, I saw Trevor earlier today and almost colluded with him on how we were going to answer this one because we're sort of turning this into the Drew Gibson show, and I'm not always in Drew Gibson's head, nor do I ever want to be. That being said, from my personal experience with him, I think there's 2 rules that he may be referring to. The first would be 30 seconds. I've been with him on cards where there's needed to be the 30-second rule called on players, and he's just looking for someone to back him up on a second or take the initiative. He's not afraid to call people out, but he wants to know that he's going to be backed up. And then the second is really just the player governance part of the sport, right? He doesn't have any problem talking on Twitter, but sometimes he doesn't want to. He also doesn't want to be the only person that's out there calling rules, right? He wants to see everyone else making those rules calls on their cards.
All right, Trevor, what's your take here?
All right, so I've got a couple of stories I can tell you about Drew, but I will agree with Seth. I know that one of them is 30 seconds, right? Like we as players also need to be accountable, and that's another thing that Drew has hit on multiple times. Is we as players need to stand up and be accountable because we are our referees. But that's the issue, right? We don't want to do that. We want to play golf. But I have I had a foot fault one time on Idlewild hole 1, and he called me on my foot fault, and it wasn't a step putt. It was actually I was in the circle on my knee, and I was trying to go up under a branch, and I leaned forward and touched the ground. Nobody else called the second on it, and we didn't talk about it until the end of the round. And me and Drew talked for 2 hours about the rules and why the PDGA needs to clean up this and clean up that. And so Drew's always been an advocate for following the rules and getting other players to follow the rules and step up and be that. So I think it's pretty much any rule, but the biggest one's probably 30 seconds that he's talking about, maybe even foot faults, because some people just don't call others on foot faults when they happen a lot in our sport.
All right, so you both did a great job kind of opening the back window to let us see what Drew's kind of referencing between the lines here. But let's take it a step further if we can. Do the rules that he's referencing here, do the violations of them or non-violations of them, whatever the case may be, does it really matter at the end of the day, Seth?
I think it does. I think the reality is that rules exist for a reason. If we don't want to implement those rules, then we shouldn't have them. And so we've got to do better. I think the hardest part here, right, is that to Trevor's point, it's not like players want to be the ones calling the rules. And so if the players aren't going to be the ones calling the rules, what does that look like? And the internal debate, I think, right now between several different parties is like, how does that look on a touring level versus a C tier level? Because you're going to have different rules in different places, because we sure as heck aren't sending tournament officials to be on every hole of your local C tier. But that might happen at a pro tour event. But then you start to think about it, like, even having one official per each hole doesn't necessarily answer all of the violations, because they could be on the fairway when you need something called on the green. So I think that there's still a long way to go, but it does matter.
All right, Trevor, does it matter?
Yes and no. Yes, rules are in place to be followed, and that's why I say yes, because I am a follower of the rules. In any game, Monopoly, whatever, I'll flip the board on you if you don't follow the rules, bro. I'm telling you. But it's and I say no because of the certain rules we're talking about. Let's be real. Does 30 seconds really matter? Like, golfers take a really long time to line up their shot, talk to their caddy, discuss the greens, whatever. I don't think that being a fast player should be a big deal. I don't think being a slow player should be a big deal. And as far as foot faults, like, yeah, they matter, but do they really?
All right, see, and that's interesting that you took two kind of different sides. You both said yes, but Trevor did throw in several no's there. Great debate there, great conversation just in general, and I think it's one that, the end of that conversation, I'm going to tease it a little bit. We're going to see a similar question next week, just about how that rules implementation needs to be made across all levels. But I'll digress there. The winner of this duel is going to be Trevor. I think the edge gives you, or I'm going to give you the edge because of your personal anecdote there from a couple years ago with Drew. I think that's a great insight into behind the scenes, kind of what Drew is thinking in what he's saying, and that he doesn't mean any ill will by it, and he's just a rule follower, and he wants there to be structure in that regard. So good for you, Trevor. You got the win here. Zach and Wes, you are up next. There are several now, over the past couple years, there's been several ranking systems that have come out. PDGA, UDisc, StatMando, just to name three. There's a couple others out there. What's your take on those? What's the most accurate of those in your opinion, Zach?
Yeah, so the three that you mentioned are some of the bigger ones. Another one that is probably worth mentioning is Ultra World, is one that people make reference to as well. For me, I think it's Statmando. Looking at them I'm a math guy, so I'm really down into looking at how they calculate things, what processes they use. Statmando, for me, when looking into it, they use a process where they kind of rank players using the previous year's national championships and world championship. They take the top 40 players, take their average rating, and then they kind of tier players and give them values to kind of determine the strength of a field at any given moment, and then use that kind of strength of field as potential points to be earned based on your position, not by strokes, but position in that field. So if let's say that particular tournament has a strength of schedule or strength of field of 106, if you take first place, you get 106 points. Second place would earn something like 65, and then it tiers down from there. And then you take a collective, I think it's 20 total best rounds that you have, and then it has a general to grade that the longer the tournament happened to go, the less valuable that tournament becomes, and they kind of rank based on those performances. And the eye test right now, looking at their rankings, Calvin, Ricky, Gannon, Simon, Paul, top five, I think it's better than the other ones right now.
All right, Wes, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I want to thank Zach for taking his minute to explain the Statmando so that I don't have to. Thank you, Zach. If you're looking at Ulti-World, they got Paul and Ricky at 1 and 2, and I don't personally agree with that right now. My personal opinion, and this seems to be how Statmando calculates their rankings more is by power index. I want to know who has the most likely chance of winning the tournament this weekend, and I think to do that you need to look at some of the more recent performances. Now, I don't want to take away from the body of work over the last year that Paul and Ricky have had moving into last year. They've both had tougher beginning of the seasons here, especially Ricky with his health issues. To put Ricky at number 2 right now, I don't agree with for the Ulti world. UDisc Live has Ricky at number 1 right now, who just somehow recently jumped over Ganon. Makes no sense at all to me. So Statmando is my answer as well. But I think what Zach is kind of touching on in a more mathy, wordy sense here is power index, and it's who has the best chance based on recent performances to win this weekend. And again, we got Calvin. They have Ricky at number 2 as well, but we're gonna skip over that. Gannon, Simon, Paul, Dickerson, and then Robinson. I really like that top 6 out of those top 7, and I think any one of those guys could definitely win this weekend. It makes sense that they are ranked up there.
All right, so you both said Statmando. Let's take it another step further to separate your arguments a little bit. What is Statmando's ranking system missing, in your opinion? Where do they have it wrong, and what are they missing in their calculations, Zach?
Wow, that's a good question. Man, just turn it on my head, why don't you? Good thing I have 4 pages of notes. Um, I guess if we had to really sit down and talk about things that it's missing compared to the other formats, is it doesn't necessarily give an overemphasis to majors. So it really just looks at the strength of the field and determines whether or not how many points you get from that. And they don't have like this multiplier that some of the other ones have. Now, personally, for me, I don't like the multiplier. I think that the strength of the field is the strength of the field. And majors tend to have stronger fields, tend to be having higher rated players at that event already competing, so there's more points to be earned already. But that would be something that could be potentially missing if you wanted to see something like that in the future.
All right, Wes, what's your take? Respond to Zach's thoughts.
Yeah, I think just hitting a little bit more heavily even on power index. I mean, we know that Ricky's having a lot of health issues right now. They still have him at number 2. I think that there should be some sort of manual calculation to this amazing formula that Zach described for us for these kind of circumstances. And again, I don't want to take away from Ricky's body of work over the last year, because that's a lot of what they're looking at here. But when you factor in that, Ricky really is kind of struggling to get through some tournaments, to have him at the power index of number 2 right now, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think maybe a little bit of manual input, a little bit more of the eye test instead of straight pure formula, I think is probably what the Statmando is missing on here right now.
All right, well said from both of you guys. Zach, thanks for the big mathy explanation. Absolutely. Wes poking a little fun at you there, but it's true. It was helpful for some people at home, I am sure. Wes, I think the key argument from you is what you kept beating us over the head with, the power rankings aspect. You want to know, going into a given weekend, who has the best chance to win at that time, at that course, at that event. And I think that's the whole point of these rankings. That's what the fans want to see. And yeah, in the case of Ricky, he has had a rough last couple of months with the injury stuff. And it's really hard to rationalize why he's sitting at number 2 or number 1 in other polls or wherever, based on that whole year's body of work versus, hey, what can you do for me now at this event? So I think that's important, and for that reason, I'm going to give you the edge in this duel. Sends us to duel number 5. We've got Seth and Zach battling it out. Seth, you're going to be up first. What is the most industry-defining, industry-impacting disc ever created, and why? Seth, take it away.
Yeah, so there's only one correct answer to this question, and I apologize to Zach that I had to go first. The answer is the Eagle, right? Like, you can say that it's the Frisbee pie plan, you can say that it's the Whammo Frisbee, but the Eagle being the first patented beveled edge disc is what changed the game completely. And we have to, well, I know that it's hard for us to imagine that because, let's be frank, none of us were playing the game whenever it was created. But when you look back to how the sport has changed significantly with the invention of that disc and what it meant for the sport as it was competitively, I think that it really is the only answer. I'm going to be interested to see what Zach says. He does not think that it's the only answer based off of his facial expressions, and so I'm looking forward to the follow-up responses in this debate.
All right, Zach, Seth teed you up. It doesn't look like you're agreeing with him on the Eagle, so what's the answer here?
First of all, thank you, Seth, for not picking the correct answer, because you are right. There's only one correct answer to this, but unfortunately, I think you missed the ball on this. So the question talking about industry changing and sport change, and I'm sorry, sport impacting. I do think there is one correct answer, and I have the disc in front of me. This one, the envy that James Conrad's throwing in from World Championships. Okay, let's break this down for a second. We want to talk about sport impacting. In 2021, when James Conrad throws in the holy shot, we have a huge influx of new players that have come into our sport. And we want to talk about how we can maintain them in our sport. They like it, it seems interesting, but things are starting to break down. We can start going back out into society, doing the things, playing soccer outside, going back to gyms to play basketball, doing the things we normally did. And then all of a sudden, there's a flare, a spark, some amazing incident that happens that inspires the disc golf world. People remember where they were the moment that shot happened. I can remember specifically what I was doing the moment that shot happened, and so can most other players. This disc flew off the shelf. People have envies in their bag because he did it. This is a huge sport impacting disc, and I think it's the disc that we should be talking about.
All right, Seth, respond to those fiery words on the MVP envy.
Yeah, so the only way that Zach really could have topped what I said was if he talked about something that came before the Eagle. Because anything that comes after the Eagle existed because of the Eagle, to some extent. And so I would make the argument that the only way that the shot happens, right, is with the creation of the beveled edge disc, which then propels the sport forward from people throwing lids. People, mind you, before the beveled edge disc, you went to all around disc tournaments. You did not go to disc golf tournaments. The beveled edge disc created the modern disc golf tournament, which ultimately becomes worlds. And so I think that while there's some ideas here that the envy might be something that people can rally around, not everyone has one in their bag. Everyone who's playing disc golf has a beveled edge disc.
All right, Zach, defend the envy.
Okay, first of all, they may not have it in the bag, but if I have this and I pull it out, they know exactly what it is. Let's just approach that and heal that right away. When it comes to the ego, let's understand that you're correct. The beveled edge, changed the world of disc golf in the sense of how we play it because of it changes how we can throw and distances. So we changed the sport from being a disc that we can only throw so far or in a certain way to now being able to throw a little farther. If we talk about the next disc that comes out, Premier Plastic, we can throw the disc farther. Okay. So we're just changing the distances of the sport itself. It feels like more than we're talking about an impact in the sport in the sense of saying that it's revolutionized. We're still playing disc golf. We just happen to change the tool to extend its range and make it with that tool instead. So for me, I think the sport has a bigger impact from the envy rather than saying it's just making disc golf play longer.
All right, well said from both of you. You took two completely different spins on the same question. I love it. That's what this show's about. I'm glad you went completely different directions with this and completely different eras, completely different decades, all the above. Great stuff. Seth goes with the Eagle. Zach goes with the Envy. Both in their own way, yeah, did define an industry, did change a sport. However, I think I'm going to lean more toward the industry defining part of this, which is absolutely the beveled edge disc of the Eagle. I find that very hard to argue with. Seth's points are quite persuasive in that regard. So I'm going to go with Seth there on that duel. Final duel, Wes and Trevor. This is a repeat from last week. Trevor, again, you're the only one standing in the way of Wes's title here. Who has the most social media account love from you? Who would you recommend the fans at home go follow on the socials?
So, what I was saying is that there are so many great disc golf accounts out there with great videos, great social media posts, giving out their sponsorships and everything. But I think my favorite, to be real, in disc golf is Tyler Brickley. anything that Tyler Brickley touches is absolute gold. One of the funniest guys, and he's so creative, he's so original, and I think that you can just catch a lot of great things from his, not only his like beginners tips, but his comedy is really touchy and funny. It's just really good stuff, and I think he's wholesome and he's genuine, and I think a lot of people can watch and just get a lot out from him, not only with disc golf but fun in life. And I think he's just one of the best to watch and follow. He's just makes me smile. So I'd advise everybody to follow Tyler Brickley on social medias because he's just class act.
I love it, Trevor. Wes, where are you going to go with this one?
I too love Tyler Brickley, such a creative and just multi-talented guy. If you're not following Trevor, Harbolt Trevor on Instagram, give Trevor a follow. Fun account to follow. But my favorite is right now is Holland Hanley. I'm just a really big fan of Holland. She's been having a really good season, but I also love her the tips that she's putting out, especially as an amateur golfer who, once I get back out on the course, is trying to improve my game. She puts out so many good tips, but what I love about the tips that she's doing is she's collaborating with players on the MPO side, on the FPO side, and she's really just like reaching out to everybody that is out there right now to kind of gain little pieces of knowledge from here and there and bring them to her audience. And I think that's such a cool thing. She's using very professional photos, doing her tournament recaps and updates, and I think that paired with the video content and just kind of the diversity of content that she's putting out there in tandem with the quality, I think makes her like a really entertaining account to follow. And I think as any amateur golfer can pick up some good tips there, and I think that adds something to what she's doing.
All right, two different takes. I love it. Trevor, double down on Tyler if you can, and maybe tell us why following Tyler Brickley on social media is more helpful or more encouraged by you than following Holland Hanley.
Well, I won't. I'll never shy away from saying follow any disc golfer because I love disc golf so much, and I want everybody to do amazing. So that's real, honest opinion from me, or honest take from me. But I think Tyler's relatable. I think he's genuine. I think he's fun. I think kids can get involved with him and everything. So while Holland does great stuff, I'm not taking anything away from her. I just think Tyler is more genuine, more fun. He makes you laugh, and he's entertaining. So I just like following him. He makes me laugh, and I do follow Holland too, and she's wonderful. She does great stuff. So, but you can follow Wes too on Instagram. Don't just follow me. Follow him and follow Seth and follow Leppy Duels, man. I mean, come on, let's do this. Let's do it all
Right.
around. Oh, Zach. I'm sorry, Zach. Crew 42. Let's do that one too.
All right, everybody's patting everybody's back here. Wes, take this duel home. Can you win the episode here?
Yeah, I think disc golf account. That's where I'm going to separate myself here. Disc golf account. Tyler Brickley, although extremely involved in disc golf, is kind of on the marketing side. His social media, while diverse, I think gets away from disc golf a little bit. Now that's certainly entertaining, especially with his musical stuff. But I think if we're looking purely at disc golf accounts, it's Holland for me. Again, just doing really good stuff. I love those tips. She did a great one with Gossage earlier in the year about forehands that really helped me with my forehands and stuff too. But again, we get a diverse disc golf content, high quality pictures, high quality video. I mean, what's not to love there? Entertaining, man.
All right, good stuff from both of you. Wes is trying to separate himself there, which I like. I like the aggressiveness a little bit in a respectful way, of course. I think you did nail it though, Wes. I think the difference is, Tyler, he's creative, he's funny, he's got the comedy going, he's relatable like Trevor said. But at the end of the day, it's not all disc golf, which Holland Hanley absolutely is. So if we're looking at disc golf accounts to follow, Holland Hanley, go follow her. Everybody at home, she's doing great stuff. So Wes takes a back-to-back win here on Leppy Duels. You've got the floor again. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this one. We got some shooters. Zach stepping his game up this week. Go follow Tyler Brickley too. I love that guy. He is fun to follow. Just a little step behind Holland maybe. But I want to talk a little bit of just about like some of the parity that we're seeing in disc golf this year. We've seen so many different winners earlier in the season on the FPO side. The MPO side is really shaking it up. We really saw that at this last major. Seth definitely hit on it in his point, talking about Silas and some of the other guys that really climbed up the leaderboard, but I think we're really seeing an explosion of kind of this next generation of talent really starting to make their way to the top. 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about some of these young guys that would put up a 1070 rated round, but then they weren't able to back it up with more consistent rounds. We're starting to see that now. Guys like Silas Schultz in that kind of younger 20s group are really starting to push, and it kind of reminds me of looking back at golf when we had Tiger and Phil for a long period of time. That was entertaining. We had Paul and Ricky for a long period of time where they were 1 and 2 battling every week. And now we're starting to see a lot more parity. A lot more of these young guys get themselves in the mix. They're putting the time in. They're taking disc golf seriously. They're focusing their life, their health, and their off seasons around the game of disc golf now. They're getting the support to be able to do those things. And I just think it's a really exciting time to be following and watching disc golf. There is somebody doing good every week that you can absolutely be a fan of and root for and support them, whether it's discs, merch, get out there, get you some Trevor Harbolt gear. It's a really exciting time to be in disc golf, and if you're not watching live disc golf and following the action, then you're missing out right now.
I love it, Wes. A nice pump-up speech, a lot of positivity, and you're exactly right. That's something to celebrate. The parity within disc golf, specifically the MPO side right now. Obviously, we've seen Kristen Tatar whipping some butt on the women's side of things. But yeah, absolutely, parity on the men's side is fantastic, and it's great to see them putting extended rounds together, especially the young ones. So congratulations again to you, Wes. Thanks so much, Trevor, Zach, Seth, for joining us. Fantastic week, fantastic cast. We look forward to having all 4 of you back in the near future. You guys at home, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and click that button down below right now. We appreciate your support. Enjoy the Jonesboro Open with Seth and Trevor this weekend. If you're there, go say hi to Seth, and we'll see all you guys next week.